Welcome everyone to the informational meeting for town meeting for 2023. We have an agenda here. I will say we did a sound check, and if people are not seated in a chair, if they're in the back or over on the side, the folks on the Zoom can't hear. So it would be nice if everyone could speak loudly and clearly, and you could stand up, but don't get too far away because they've got the big thumbs down from the audience when he was doing the sound check. Everyone who is online, if you could please mute your computer or your phone. If you'd like to speak, I will say, sure, use the little raise your hand button or go like this so people in the audience notice you, because you are sitting on a table probably 10 feet away from most of us, and we may or may not be able to see you. We will then call on you, and then you can speak. Let's see. So agenda, we are without our moderator today. Holly Ross could not make it. So I think it's up to us to decide if we would like to run the meeting or appoint a moderator. Anyone have thought?
I would like to appoint Frank Sears to be our moderator.
You're okay with
He's
that?
up for it.
Yep. All right, you're up, Frank. Here's your agenda.
Are you okay with that, Frank?
Oh, yeah. I think you're gonna need to come to the front somehow.
Okay.
You can sit here.
Yes, we did.
No, just yeah, whatever. You want to pull around?
Can you
Yeah,
get
just
this
sit
out?
at the end here, Frank, or stand here. Okay. I got down to here. Does anyone have questions about the process? Robin Chestnut Tangerman is on the phone, and we might want to think about switching our order and letting him go first.
He's done.
Okay. All right, so then I'll serve as the moderator this evening. My name is Frank Sears, for those of you that might not know me. It looks like we are down to the questions process. The Pledge of Allegiance, is that going to be in order for this evening or not?
Right there. You are the
Okay.
moderator, my
So
friend.
let us begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Very windy.
Michael, you could be the official on the burler, you know. It's a town office.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
And to the republic.
One nation, indivisible, liberty.
Thank you.
No, I can't. It's too quiet. I can't get them.
If anybody's not muted on the phone, that would be helpful. We are getting some extra sound during the pledge. I think I see a couple of you who are not muted. There are chairs, empty chairs over here. Please come sit, fill in. Because we're gonna need you closer so you can hear and people can hear you. Thank you. Not to embarrass you, but that's what you get.
So as we continue on to our next line item, that is a moment of silence for those who have passed since the last meeting. I will read the names. Alma Summers, Kathy J. Fox, Stephen O. Eaton, Barbara Eaton, Lucille V. Gilmore, Terry Caderet, Stanley Martell, James D. Perron, and Richard Frederick. Moment of silence for those, please. As we continue on, a couple of announcements that I'll make at this time that are listed here. There will be a bake sale on the 5th and the 6th
No, there will be a big sale tomorrow,
Fine.
for the fifth and sixth grade.
For the 5th, all right,
On the
Tuesday, for the fire department, okay? For the library, for the green up, for the rabies clinic, for the town fun day. And that is tomorrow.
I think you've confused your audience. Could you just state in one sentence what's actually happening tomorrow?
Bake sale
To support.
to support the fire department.
No. Just the fifth and sixth.
Oh.
It is confusing.
It's the way, I'm just reading it the way it's printed. You'll have to excuse me. I was just given the script.
That was meant for people that want to announce those kinds of things. They
Got it.
usually have the announcement. Mo talks about the fire department. Somebody should talk about green up. You know, somebody might know when Fun Day is, bake sale. There's a rabies clinic next Saturday down in Wallingford,
Okay,
between 12 and 2, if you want to get your dog's license, rabies shot. But I don't know that anybody, if anybody wants to speak to those things, you can say, speak now, forever hold the peace.
does anyone from the fire department want to speak?
I could say, just make sure you check your batteries and your smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors and fire extinguishers as usual.
As we turn the clocks forward, coming up here in a week, 2 weeks.
Check your, well. check your chimney.
Anyone from the library want to speak?
Yeah, speak from the library. We're opening on Saturdays, from 10 to 12, the first Saturday of the month. Started last Saturday and it's going to happen in April and May and.
Okay. We heard about the rabies clinic already in Wallingford coming up. Green up days?
I'll speak to Green Up. So Green Up is gonna be in person. This is the second year we've done it in person since COVID. It will be on the first Saturday in May. I don't happen to know that date off the top of my head. It's the 6th. Thank you, Gail. And it will be from 8:30 to 11 at the, we'll gather at the town garage, at the new town garage. You can get bags there and get a section of road. There will be free ice cream afterwards and prizes for youngsters or people who think they're young. And if you would like to do it yourself, Green Up, you can also get bags from Gail at the town office and sign up for section of road. And if you have any questions, you can call me, Doug Fontaine, on the phone. Thank you.
Okay. Town Fun Day, anyone want to speak on Town Fun Day?
Don't have a date set yet.
Well,
No
we do,
date?
actually.
We do? Did
Yeah,
we set one?
we
Oh,
did.
great. What's the
July
date?
8th,
July 8th.
Sunday, July 8th.
There you go.
But we need help forming a committee to organize that because one of our stellar leaders, Logan Birdsall, is moving out of town.
Oh,
So that is going to be a big job to fill and we'd love all of you to volunteer. Or several of you. We'd love you all to come.
Okay, so volunteers needed for Town Fun Day. And who's the contact for that then? Would that be,
Me or Meadow.
so
Yeah.
Kathy or Meadow, contact them. Are there any other announcements besides what I've just extended out here? Either here in the hall or on Zoom, any announcements? Okay,
We don't see any waving hand.
no, so there's others, 5 minutes approximately.
That's for Representative Robert Chestnut Benjamin, who's on Zoom.
Got it. Robin, welcome. Thank you for being with us. Can you hear us okay?
Yes, loud and clear. Thank you, Frank.
Okay,
And
let's go ahead and turn the floor over to you, sir.
okay, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I wish I was there in person, but trying to make it to 5 towns tonight. So I would also try to make this quick, but and leave time for a few questions at the end. So the legislative session started with a couple of clear priorities, which the top ones being housing, which we heard everybody talking about the difficulty of finding housing anywhere in the state, childcare, and climate action. And those were the big three. Of course, it being government, you get not sidetracked, but other things piled on top. And in this legislative district, a lot of that is the question about paying tuition to independent schools and the Supreme Court ruling that you can't have to include religious schools in there and how to adapt. It's not an issue in Tinmouth, so I'll just skim over that, but in other communities like Middletown Springs, Paulet, Rupert, and Wells, it's a really critical issue. And another one being the, I'll just say fiasco at the Vermont State University when the president unilaterally announced that the libraries would go convert to an all digital format and they would be getting rid of the books. And faculty, staff, students, and some administration were completely blindsided by that. And there's a lot of uproar. It seems to me to be a totally ill-considered decision with absolutely horrible rollout. And I hope they will reverse that decision, but it's really largely a matter for the Board of Trustees rather than the legislature, other than the legislature showing support for the faculty and staff and recognizing that it's probably a violation of work contract, the union contract with the employees. But on the issues that we intended to focus on, housing being a big one, we are actually have a lot of federal money still available. It's one-time money, so we're trying to utilize it not to start programs that will need continued funding, but on one-time expenses. And housing, building new housing, refurbishing old housing, getting new apartments online, making housing more affordable is a perfect use for this one-time money. And there are a lot of programs to support that at both lower income levels and middle income levels, what we call workforce housing or the missing middle. A number of different programs, and I'm happy to talk to anybody about those in the future. There are also some changes to zoning and a couple of minor changes to Act 250 with the intention of increasing density in downtowns that have sewer and water to again, increase density and make more affordable housing in existing downtowns. Childcare, it's largely the Senate that is working on that now, but the goals are to increase compensation for the childcare providers who have been chronically underpaid for decades, to increase availability. And one of the ways of doing that is making full-time, full day childcare available to 4-year-olds across the state. That has been a Senate effort so far, be coming over to the House soon, and I look forward to seeing it and learning more about it then. Climate issue, the big one has been the Affordable Heat Act. There's been a huge and pretty successful disinformation campaign saying that this will drive the price of heating fuel up. I recently read up to $15 a gallon, which is patently absurd. What it does is try to transition us from volatile fossil fuels like heating oil to more stable and regulated fuels like electricity, wood pellets, and renewables. It doesn't force homeowners to do anything. It's all voluntary on the part of homeowners. The Senate, where this started, I think struck a good compromise, which is the bill as passed out of the Senate requires the Agency of Natural Resources to design this plan, but before it's implemented, it will come back to the legislature for thorough review. No rubber stamp here. It would be, taking testimony, reviewing it, and the legislature would essentially have to vote on it again. So I think that's a good check and balance built into the program. And I'll actually stop there to allow time for questions, if people have any.
Kathy has a question for you.
I have a question. I think everyone in the state is concerned about housing, and the measures that you mentioned are potentially helpful for downtowns or for towns that have infrastructure around water and sewer, but I haven't heard anybody coming up with any creative ideas to help towns that do not have water and sewer, and do not have downtowns. And one thing that comes to mind is the septic regulations are now run by the state. And in order to put in a septic system, you need to have both one area that perks and then a backup area. And for much of the land in much of the rural towns, this makes trying to build a house really hard. And you can't actually build a house with a composting toilet. So there's an idea to think about, just a little flexibility there. And like you have a 3-bedroom house and you want to add a 2-bedroom auxiliary, but you only have a permit for a 4-bedroom house, let's give credit for low flush toilets, let's be a little more creative, because right now you go into that system and the answer is either yes or no, and you follow all the rules. So I just would like to challenge the legislature to remember the quiet rural areas, many of which you represent. Because, I'm not saying we want to build a Rutland here in Tinmouth, but it would be nice for our kids to be able to afford to build houses here, or our kids' friends, or other lovely young people who could help bring down our average age in the small rural town.
Yeah,
So that's
thank you for that.
one issue, and my second issue is just reappraisal.
So thanks for both of those, Kathy. Anybody else? No.
Nice job.
I actually met with the Agency of Natural Resources with their, I forget what they call it, the Alternative Systems Coordinator, to talk about what do we do in rural communities where we don't have septic, and how about composting toilets and incinerating toilets or group septic systems. And they do have a number of approved systems. They're still largely considered experimental, and they don't like to allow composting toilets, not because they don't like them, but because their fear, and I don't know if it's a fear borne out by experience, is that when the house is sold, the new owners say, I don't like composting toilets, I'm going to replace these with flush toilets. And suddenly you have a 3-bedroom house using a very underbuilt septic system. So that's the rationale for some of the rigidity of the system. Not saying I agree with it or defending it, but just providing that perspective. But one of the things that can work for us for density even is that neighbors can get together, or that you could have a 5-home development with a remote septic system. It can be piped under a road to some adjacent land, to a community leach field. So there are some alternatives, but overall, your point is very well taken about the limitations and challenges of rural communities. As far as the reappraisal, it appears that the direction that Ways and Means is recommending is for the state to essentially be in charge of reappraisal, and rather than having that be a responsibility of towns. And obviously, with 2/3 of the towns in the state having mandated reappraisals, we won't get to them, probably not for 7 or 8 years, with the number of appraisers that there are. But the system, the idea is still percolating in Ways and Means. They have not passed a bill or recommended a solution yet, but it appears to be toward the state being having the responsibility for reappraisal in towns. Which means that the towns would no longer get the reappraisal payments that they get now, the per parcel payments.
And the issue for everyone here, if you don't know, is that when you have a lot of sales in your town that are quite a bit higher than what you're assessing people for, your common level of appraisal, which is the amount that we're assessing people to compared with what the state says it should be, drops. When it drops below a threshold, you're required to do a reappraisal. And you heard Robin say something like 75% of the towns are now at that, like, you must reappraise, and there aren't enough appraisers to do it. And we think we might be up, you need to do it. What'd you say, 5 or 6 years?
Less than that, but I was talking to somebody, this is Gail Fowler. I was talking to somebody the other day that does reappraisals. And a few years ago, the state changed. It used to be if your CLA was below 80, you had to do a reappraisal. They bumped it up to 85. If they reduced that down to 80, the number of reappraisals required would go down by about half. So it would give towns a little bit longer to get their act together. And I don't know, Ways and Means is just thinking about that at all, Robin, but something to consider.
I actually suggested to them as well that they allow more leeway for tossing outliers, the overpriced sales, or what we would consider to be overpriced. Oddly enough, they're not taking my advice. But
Well, and the impact on all of us is primarily when our school taxes are set. And Josh, do you want to explain this? You may be able to explain it better than I, but.
Yeah, so I'm Josh Squire, so I represent everybody here on the school board, for the school board in our district. And like, so our district spending is actually down. We're like minus 1.6% is what our base tax rate is. If you live in Clarendon, if you live in Wallingford, this year, your tax rate is only about 2 or 3% of an increase. Because they didn't really have any crazy high sales. All their sales were according to, they also are probably the most recent appraisals of our district. So their housing prices are the closest. Our case, we had some very high sales and too many to say, well, we can just discount them. And so that means our tax rate, no matter what we did as the school board, we have no control over this part of how much people's houses get sold for. So we're looking at a much higher percentage. Shrewsbury's in a similar boat. Theirs is lower. Ours is high for the district. And the problem is, as the district, we can cut $1 million out of our budget, and it still only barely affects this part of the percentage. So that would still go up. So we still have a lot of problems with it. And that's why the other thing that they're talking about in Ways and Means is to try to change how we do the property tax, is to try to move it more towards just a pure income. Because right now, about 70% of people pay based on their income. When you get your tax form for your property tax, on it, there's a part that says, you know, state. And that part is what comes back to you. And so you get that, and basically, as long as your house value is under $400,000 and you make a certain amount under that per year, you get some amount with a maximum of about $5,000 off your property tax. But none of that, like, you literally have to be going to these finance meetings and doing all to even understand what and the other part is, when we're doing the budget, we don't know what the CLA is going to be, and we don't know what the tax surplus or not surplus is going to be. So we have a very, very complicated way that we fund this part of our tax structure. And so hopefully Ways and Means can also just make it a more simplified structure. We also have non-homestead is for everyone else that isn't a primary house. So that's second homes and industry and businesses. And so that's also makes it more complicated for changing the non-homestead rate. But we do, if anyone's interested, have finance meetings, and next year, just like we did this year, we have public meetings as we're making the budget. And anybody can come, and we make different decisions based on people coming to those meetings. So if you want your voice heard, go to those.
Thank you, Josh, for that input. Are there any other questions for Robin at this point from anyone, either here or remotely?
And I'm happy to follow up with people if they would like to email me or call me. And in light of what Josh just said, Grant Reynolds once said to me, he said, Robin, I used to read and understand the Pentagon budget. I don't understand education financing in Vermont.
Thanks, Robin.
Okay, thank you all.
Just a point of interest, our CLA is at, which is the common level appraisal, I'm looking at you, 75,
71.
71%. So even if they change it to 80,
No, sorry, it's 77.
Sorry.
It was 91.
it went from 91 to 77 in 1 year. It's a 3-year average. We had at least two very high sales after April 1st of last year. It's a 3-year average, so it's not going in the right direction.
But on the other hand, it means your property's worth a whole lot more.
It means people want to live here, you know?
Yeah.
It's a weird thing. It's like people want to live here. We don't have enough houses. People
People want to buy houses here, and some of them want to live here, and thank you for living here, but some of them want to just have a house here.
Yeah.
We have a lot of empty houses.
Okay, then. Are there any others at this time that need to speak on any topic before we continue on to the warning? Anybody remotely like to speak on anything at this meeting? Then we continue on, and according to my printout, I'm to read the beginning of the warning and then each article, one by one, asking for comments or questions. So I'll begin with that. This being the warning, the Tinmouth Town Meeting, May 6th, 2023, moving into May 7th. March 6th to March 7th. The legal voters of the town of Tinmouth, Vermont are hereby warned and notified to meet in person at the Tinmouth Community Center or virtually on Monday, March 6th, 2023 at 7 p.m. for the purpose of being provided information and to discuss the articles to be voted March 7th, 2023. The legal voters of the town of Tinmouth, Vermont are hereby warned and notified to vote at the Tinmouth Community Center on Tuesday, March 7th, 2023, between the hours of 8 a.m. and 7 p.m. to vote by Australian ballot on Articles 1 through 5. Article 1 reads, shall taxes be paid to the treasurer, first half due August 15th, and second half due November 15th. That's Article 1. Are there any comments or questions on Article 1? Either here or virtually? Hearing none, we'll go to Article 2. Article 2 reads, shall the voters appropriate the sum of $259,925 for general expenses of the town for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2023 and ending June 30th, 2024. Would any of the select board members like to speak on this article?
The biggest change, in both our budgets was really personnel. I think it's fair to say that since Gail and I started working together many years ago, I'm trying to remember how many, it was a long time ago, 36. Is that possible? No, it's not possible. Anyway, a long time ago, the job of the select board and running the town, and within that, I include the town clerk, the town treasurer, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We've added select board assistant, has become so much more work. There is just so much more required of town. And so we do have the role of select board assistant, which Gail has very ably filled for many years. And we have all agreed that we need to fund it more because she needs more time or more help to get things done. So that was one of the biggest changes on the town side. Are there any questions about that budget?
Any questions on the budget?
So were you saying, I'm Teresa Hoffman, so you're saying that the town budget includes a position for assistant?
Correct. It's on page 12 under general budget expenses. You see select board and then select board assistant. And then Gail also fills the town clerk and treasurer roles, as well as zoning administrator, planning commission secretary, and what did I forget? Lister. I think that's the majority. I may have missed some. But that line item went up to $9,000 from $7,500. Some of that was a cost of living, which we applied across the board to all our positions. But that one, you know, there's just a lot to do. And by that, I mean, the expectations on small towns are really quite similar to the expectations on large towns, even though we have essentially one full-time plus staff person and a couple part-time assistants. So it's a lot.
So I have a question, Frank, here, on the cost of living increase. What was that percentage that went across for the employees this year?
That was 5%.
5% this year.
Yep. And, you know, we really looked at what the CPI was, and it was, when we first started doing it, it was at 8, and then the next month it went down, and we kept it at 5. It was 5 last year, and we felt that that was generous, although acknowledging that cost of living has probably gone up more, and our hope is that it will continue to go down before this wage increase kicks in. This budget starts July 1, so that's when the increase will kick in for all our employees.
Any questions at this point on what was just said? Remotely, are there any questions on the budget? If I hear no questions, then I'll continue on to Article 3. Article 3 reads, shall the voters appropriate the sum of $613,300 for highway expenses of the town for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2023 and ending June 30th, 2024. Do we have someone to speak from the select board on this before we go out for questions?
The main, on page 11, under expenses, you'll see that extra help line. We budgeted $5,020 in fiscal year 22, and we spent $20,845. A bunch of that was the early work on the site of the town garage, which we reimbursed ourselves for. And we have really come to, you will see that again when we close out our fiscal 23 budget, which will be the year from July 1 of 22 to July 1 of 23. And we are budgeting, more money in FY '24, really to acknowledge that with the new stormwater management requirements that the state has, set forth for all towns, and there's a multi-page, many-line spreadsheet we'd be happy to share if you'd like to see. We have a multi-year plan for reducing stormwater, and that requires our team to do a certain number of segments a year. That's why you're seeing all these new stone line ditches. If you're driving around thinking, look at that new stone line ditch, that's the state saying to us, you need to reduce stormwater from this area, and they have prioritized them for us. And the cost is, we are able to do that in-house, but it takes more time. We also have additional initiatives that our crew is trying to get done. And so we felt that this is basically one person for 25 weeks, 24 weeks, something like that. And Glenn Merrill has been filling that position for us part-time, half year-ish. Now this will be he's on his 3rd year, I think, doing a great job. We love having him. The crew would love to have a 3rd full-time person. I think that we really see the benefit in the summer, and we have not yet felt like we could make that jump. And we do pretty well in the winter. You know, it's in the summer when you need someone flagging and you need someone cutting trees and you need someone else loading them. You know, having 3 is really helpful for many of the projects they're doing. So that was a big change. I think you can also look across things like diesel fuel. Yeah, things like that.
Okay.
Well, healthcare went the right way.
Okay, any questions based on what you just heard?
The other thing I will note is that we have a new building. So we have a new propane bill, a new electric bill, and a new phone bill. So you'll see that reflected here as well.
Once again, any questions? Any questions remotely? Okay, hearing none, I'll move on to Article 4. Article 4 is, shall the voters vote to eliminate the office of constable? We have one of the select board members like to address that.
This is because of the requirements now for the role of constable. We decided that because we already hired the sheriff's department to work in our town, and they already meet all of those requirements, that it was preferable that we just use the sheriff's department and eliminate the office of constable. And so we are now asking the town if they would like to vote on this decision that we are putting forward. It removes a lot of the liability on the town for having the constable as a office.
And the 2 things that a constable can actually do now, Gail, are like dogs.
And
The issue is really firearms and liability and needing to be trained as a police officer, which is a long and expensive training in order to be a constable with law enforcement duties. So we currently have the position without law enforcement duties, which is very little. And so it's our feeling that it's just cleaner to have all that responsibility in the sheriff's department. And
the
responsibility falls on the sheriff's department, not on us.
And we have excellent animal control officers, so we feel like they do a great job, and that's what most of the calls were previously when we had a constable, were usually related to animals, so.
I have a question. This is Doug Fontaine. Didn't it used to be in statute that towns were required to have a constable? Has that changed?
when they changed the rules,
When they changed.
they allowed towns to,
That's the statute from last year.
well, there you go, there's the statute from last year. section 417 VSA 22651 was amended to read constable's appointment, removal, and elimination of office. And number 1 says the town may vote at an annual meeting to eliminate the office of constable. I can continue reading if you'd like. There are
Oh,
4
okay.
other items. Basically that if the town votes to eliminate the office, the select board will appoint a town officer to discharge the constable's duties, if any, which is for us, the sheriff's department.
Other questions on Article 4? All right, then. Hearing none, I'll move on to Article 5. Article 5 reads to elect all town officers now required by law to include a moderator for 1 year, a select board member for 3 years, a town clerk for 3 years, a treasurer for 3 years, a lister for 3 years, an auditor for 3 years, and a tax collector, delinquent tax collector for 1 year. That is Article 5. Are there questions on Article 5? Any questions remotely on Article 5?
There are no contested races, by the way.
And if you hadn't heard, Gail just said there are no contested races at this time. So there won't be
On the ballot.
on the ballot.
We're not adding any between now.
Could be a big write-in campaign, but. I haven't gotten into it yet.
Okay. So hearing nothing on Article 5. Does anyone have any questions? Does anyone have any questions for any of those folks that are running that you know about? Or do you not know who's running even? For the list of people I just went through. Are there any questions for any of the people? The candidates? None from the floor. Any remotely? I hear no questions. So continuing on the warning, the next line reflects dated at Tinmouth, Vermont, this 26th day of January, 2023. Signed by the select board members, Kathy Reynolds, Chair, Meadow Squire, Kevin Eaton.
I have something I'd like to say, and Gail had her hand raised also. She was first.
Gail.
So I have a general question. The informational meeting, do you like it on a Monday night, or would you rather have it on a Saturday afternoon?
Monday.
I was asked why we did it the night before. We can do it legally up to 10 days before. Would you like to have it like the Monday before the Tuesday, or is it better to do it the day before and then you remember everything and you go vote tomorrow? I think for people who might want to vote absentee or whatever the early voting, it could be easier. If they need to mail a ballot, but I don't see anyone from far away here, but that's a consideration. I was asked. Okay.
Can I ask
Yes,
a
we have
question?
question.
Gail, have you, just talking about when the right dates are, have you already received many completed ballots?
We had requests for 35 and I had 30 back.
Oh, okay. So the night before,
For tonight.
okay. Because I like it the night before personally, but if most of the people who are needing absentee ballots have already voted, they're not benefiting from any discussion or questions.
Because there were a lot of questions and discussion.
All right. Where's the chocolate chip cookie?
All right,
Dan has a question then. I will
And then
speak
you
to.
have
Yeah.
one too. Jan?
Mine isn't a question, mine is, a comment, and I would like to publicly thank Kathy Reynolds for all the time and energy that she has put into being on the select board previously and this time. She has brought so much energy and dedication to this town. She has written so many grants. I have no idea. I could list a few of them. And I think we have been very fortunate to have Kathy on the select board. So I would like to give a round of applause for Kathy.
Thank you all. Speech, well, I was just gonna give you some updates, so I'll give you some updates. I wanted to talk a little bit about the town garage. Just a reminder, we bonded in 2020. We set our budget in 2019. Our budget for the town garage was about $500,000 plus affiliated permitting and site and so forth and so on. As you know, prices have gone up. We have completed the town garage. We have a town garage. Nice job, team. Our crew is very happy. I am very happy that they are inside, that they are not putting chains on outside in the snowstorm. All our equipment is now inside. It feels like a nice success. However, it is only, I'm gonna say half, it's more than half, but it's one of the two buildings that we bonded to build. We bonded for a total of $850,000. The hope was that we would, but we borrowed $350,000 and we had a bunch saved up. So we, depending on how we choose to pay for certain things, we had prepaid for engineering. That didn't have to come out of that 850, but when we add together what we really spent, our number is over 800, I think, rough numbers. And, how do we run out things like, the guys have been building workbenches and shelves. The guys put in, they had to put in railing around the mezzanine and we had to buy some rolling stairs to get up there. Like, those are things that really need to happen. We had to run compressed air lines. There's just been a lot to get it. And we now have a top-notch, first-class town garage. We can be proud of that. We don't have a salt and sand shed. We had budgeted initially, based on conversations with other towns, about 200,000 for that. It became very clear to all of us, and I'll put Frank, all of the people on the select board since then and during that time, that the costs on salt and sand sheds have gone up too. I think I wrote the same grant 3 times, and the third time we actually got it, and it was for $300,000 for salt and sand shed, and I was like, yes, we are good. And we have to match that with 75, so we have 375, we should be fine, right? Well, town of Ripton just went out to bid for what we think we want. That's in quotes because it may change. And their construction estimate in 2021 was $600,000. They're out to bid, so we'll get a good number. The plan now is to go out to bid for our design services. We will pay, we will be paying out of our $75,000 share to get ourselves through design and out to bid. Then we'll have a number. Then we won't have enough money. Then we'll have to go back and write another grant or come back to the town for more money or cut the whole project or cut it in, or there are lots of things that could happen. But that's really where we are. And the hope was that we were going to be able to do everything we promised with prices basically doubling, and the reality is that we're not. I have volunteered to continue working on that grant. My sum total for grants you did mention is over $500,000 for this town in my time. Of course, that 300 really helped. That was a big jump. And we'll see where we get with that. I don't think this board is ready to promise anything, and I can't imagine a future board would either. But the hope is really to increase our storage capabilities for salt, so we don't run out. The issue with rainy winters is that you use a lot more salt than if it just snows. So we have enough storage now for maybe 3 storms, maybe 4, depending on what the storm is. And there have been years, haven't heard about it this winter, so I think we've been okay, where we're such a tiny town, we get shorted and we just can't get a delivery, and then paved roads are slippery. And I think we have strived to provide really A-plus roads. And we don't have a big crew. They work really hard. They do a really good job. And we try to keep the equipment in really good shape, because with only 2 guys and 2 trucks, if you lose a truck or or a person gets sick, that's half the roads. That means you're waiting twice as long. So that's where that one is. And then the last thing I want to just mention is the ARPA money, which we do still have a majority of that money. And I think this configuration of the board has been very hesitant to allocate much of it because of this looming town garage issue. And you'll see a lot of towns like solving problems with their ARPA money. Middletown Springs is building a new building, and they were over budget by over 200 grand. All their ARPA money solved their problem. So we have made some small allocations. We did recently just receive an emergency management grant, which will put backup generators at the town office and the fire department. We have to match that with almost $19,000. So we'll pay for that out of ARPA. That seemed like, when we have an emergency, our emergency operations center will actually have power and phone and a bathroom, and the water will work here at the school, which is our emergency shelter. So that's sort of where that is. There's still more than 3/4 of that money there for future boards to figure out. Those were kind of the 3 things I still kind of have on my plate, and I will continue to work on those grants. Assuming you want me to, but just to finish them up. Yep.
Thank you.
Hold those ARPA funds indefinitely, or there's a deadline on the
No, 26.
2026.
We have to allocate them by the end of 2024 and spend them by the end of 2026.
Yeah, and I mean, it's really nice to have, it's not $1 million, it was a total of like 177, and we probably spent 30-ish,
30, I think.
maybe 25-ish, yeah. So, there you go.
Thank you, Kathy. Meadow, did you have something you want to say here?
Well, Jan said everything I was gonna say so nicely.
Okay.
But it was just a thank you for Kathy for all the hard work you put in and sticking with it for so long. Thank you.
Well, I'm gonna focus on fun, not government, so call me. The thing I noticed in this 6 years compared to my first 15 is that it's really hard, it's harder, I think, particularly in the virtual age, and particularly now without as many face-to-face interactions with people, for us as a town to communicate. So I really want to come up with ways for us to see each other in real life more. And Meadow and I had this idea. This was not a select board idea. This was just an idea, like, let's create a job and we'll call it the Minister of Fun, or like, we'll have a lot of fun figuring out what that job is. And that job would be to create some kind of gathering for the town once more. And we are looking to fund it through perhaps the community fund. And it might be a potluck, or it might be a cooking class, or it might be, I don't even know what it might be. It might be whatever people show up for. But think about how hard it would be to meet people if you just moved here. Right? Like, we don't have you can maybe hang out at the dump and meet some people. You can go to the town office. People come through there all the time. Gail knows more news than anyone I know, but it's hard. And I think it's harder than it used to be. So how can we make it easier? How can we make more connections for people? And if you have thoughts on that, I'd love to hear it. If you want to be the Minister of Fun, or maybe it's 4 ministers of fun and you do 3 things, I don't know. But that's kind of what I've been thinking about. How can we engage more as a community face to face? And I spend way too much time on Zoom, but I understand it's more convenient for many people. But I love the face to face because I think you really, it's just more real. And we're losing that in our lives now. So that's my goal for the
I look
future.
forward to
Okay.
There you
seeing
go.
more of you then.
Kevin, what about ye? What do ye have to say? Anything at all?
Not much. It's all been said.
All right, then if there are no other announcements or comments, then at this time, I will go ahead and recess this meeting until 8 AM Tuesday, March 7th for voting here at the community center. Again, the polls open at 8 o'clock in the morning and they run through 7 PM. And it's printed here too. If you asked for an early absentee ballot, please make sure it is returned by 7 Tuesday, the 1st, 7.
It does say
Okay.
one, it is.
All right. They set me up here, folks. They set me up here. They set me up. Okay,
Thank you so much, Frank.
that's it. That would be it. Thank you for attending. Virtually also, thank you for attending this evening. And let's make it to the polls tomorrow if you haven't voted yet.
Yes.
Okay.
And you want help with, put the chairs back and are you setting up the, be able to leave here tomorrow.